to the Naptime Podcast. I'm Emily Schofield, and I'm so grateful to spend this Monday morning with you. Today, we have history in the making, if you will, because we have our first guest on the show, and I'm so excited to invite my aunt, or I guess Kate's aunt, Joy Wren, to the show to share her story today. We're going to be covering the topic Becoming Mama, which is growing your wisdom and your belly. So first things first, we want to start off with the recipe, and Joy actually has one to share with us.
Hi. One of our family favorites is black bean soup. It sounds boring, but it's actually super delicious, and it's easy because you throw it in your Instapot. If you don't have an Instapot, you could probably do it in a crock pot. But anyways, Emily will have that linked in the show notes, but it's yummy.
Yes,
and it has
I
meat
can
in
speak
it
for
too.
the Instapot. Instapot is my go-to. I love all the Instapot recipes, so I was really happy when I saw that was also one. Because I think we have 2 up there now for Instapot related. But
Yeah, perfect.
So, without further ado, let's get into it. We want to go over a couple things today, mainly understanding what it's like to go from 1 kid to 2 kids, from 2 to 3, from 3 to 4, which obviously you have a lot of experience in. I only have the 1. But a lot of things that I think moms get nervous about when they only have 1 kid is being stuck with that 1 kid and wondering what it's like to have more, because Valerie is a really big handful right now, and the idea of having 2 to follow around is kind of intimidating. So I'm really happy to have you as an experienced mom here to just talk about your time and your feelings and just all the lessons that God's taught you. So if you don't mind, I'd love to have you introduce yourself and kind of share a little bit about your story and all 4 of your kids.
All right. Well, I'm honored to be here, so thanks for asking me.
Yes.
And my husband and I have been married. It'll be 14 years in May. And we have 4 children on the earth. Our oldest is Jack, and he will be 10 on March 16th. He is a bookworm, super passionate. He's kind, he's strong-willed, which is exciting. But he's also a very, like, one-of-a-kind, really fiercely loving. Like, he's a great friend. I don't know how to explain that better. Just, he loves to talk. He loves to be around friends. He's very black and white rule follower, yet at the same time tries to find the gray sometimes to justify his own sin. He's a thinker, and he's a great big brother. And his I thought it'd be fun just tell him their one of their favorite foods. His is PBJs. So, my next one is Alana, and she is 8. She is calm, quiet, sweet, tenderhearted, yet little mischievous, and at times she can be silly, funny, and a little sassy side to her too. Her
As
favorite
every girl
thing
needs,
right? You have to. I mean, she's got 3 brothers, so she's got to have it.
Got to hold her own.
Her favorite would probably be chocolate. So, yeah. She actually is. Was born with a condition called Danny Walker malformation, and so she is the only girl, but also has she's had 4 brain surgeries. So that plays into kind of differences in challenges when it comes to increasing a family. But our next one is Koa. He is 6. He is quiet and shy until he knows you. You probably attest to that. Didn't he kind of open up once you were approved?
Yes, once I was married in, I was accepted.
Yeah, he does not like to experience new people, and he is a food lover. He's like any and all food. He's very patient, selfless. He never really pushes ahead. But at the same time, he'll push back if it's at his limit. If his brother's driving him crazy, you'll know it. So, and last but not least is Malachi. He is 3. He is our rainbow baby. We lost a baby May 16th, actually our anniversary, 2019. So Malachi is passionate. He is a people person. He loves to be a part of everything, and nothing is beyond him in his eyes. He is food anytime, all the time, if he wants it and if you're eating it. But, sometimes if you want him to eat it, there might be some pushback. I stay home and homeschool my children. And my husband is currently the manager of audio at Calvary Chapel, Melbourne, at our church, and he's worked there for the last 18 years. My passion, other than Jesus and my husband and my children, is singing, music, and songwriting. So that,
And she's very good at it too.
so
Yeah.
that is us in a nutshell.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Hopefully that can help other people kind of get an idea of what the last 10 years has looked like, excuse me. And with all of that, I mean, you've already kind of shared a couple of the challenges that you've faced between 1 and 2 and all the specifics to each kid too that you can't necessarily count on. You get really excited when you are pregnant and you're praying for a healthy baby, and it's not that it's not a healthy baby, but it might not be exactly what you envision in your head. And I know that's something that can also scare a lot of people. So how are some of the ways that you, I guess, kind of, number one, took in that challenge, especially with Alana, and kind of prepared yourself or really worked with God for something that you thought was going to be really difficult or not something that you had expected?
So kind of what I was kind of saying before, it is kind of hard to quantify like the hardest transition because they all had some elements of hard.
Yeah.
I know there's some people out there who's like, oh, this to this is super hard and the rest are not. And it's like, I didn't really feel it was so. If I had to like pick one, it would probably be going from 3 to 4. But that's really because I had a terrible third C-section and blood pressure complications, and I just had a lot of major healing that I needed. I would say the hardest thing in my parenting journey is what we've already talked about, is really my journey with my daughter's brain surgeries and all the things that lead up to those, because she essentially, normal childhood, you have fevers, right? You have some throw-ups, you have that kind of stuff. Well, those things that are normal in childhood are also things that are her in trouble, her needing to go to the ER, so, I would say what, for me, just with kind of preparing for her, I know in my pregnancy, because I found out she was a girl, and it literally was over the moon excited because I had a boy, and I was excited that God was giving us a girl. And it was the very next day that literally I got a call from the doctor, and they're like, you need to come into the office in an hour, type of thing. So it was shocking. But I had a note page on my phone, and I wrote down a bunch of scripture verses, and I had a lot of other people that would send me encouragement. And they would send it just like different quotes or even just scripture verses. And basically for the rest of the pregnancy, mornings were a lot of times hard. There were some days where I was just like, I don't feel like I have the strength to get up. Like just the weight of the unknown and just the sorrow of being told, she's fine now. We don't know what's going to happen when she's born. She might not be able to breathe. And, all that unknown was very heavy. And I remember I would grab my phone and just read through those verses. And honestly, the Lord gave me strength, through his word, reminding me who he is. And, so that I think can play in with any part of just motherhood, is that he is the one, he's the one who gives life, right? So we like to take a lot of credit of, oh yeah, we chose to have this many kids. But for anyone who's had a loss, it kind of brings you back to, I really am not in control of this. And, he is good, and he does know. Our first actually took 16 months to get pregnant with. So I remember during that time, I was like, maybe I just want a baby too much, or maybe, I had all the things. But, one of the verses I remember, Proverbs 13:12, hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a desire fulfilled is a tree of life. And I remember the Lord being like, you are hoping in a child. You're not hoping in me. And I am the one who gives a child. So he really taught me that, I needed to hope in him and not in what I wanted, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I totally get that.
So I know that like there were different areas like with, you know, adding additions, because when you go, you know, obviously when you have one, it's like it is overwhelming because everything's new. You've never done it before. But in all reality, when you add another child, you know, 2 Corinthians says, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power, which is God's power, is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly in my weaknesses, so the power of Christ may rest upon me. And you know, his strength is there and his grace is sufficient. Right now, when you have one, or even if you have two, whoever's listening, you know, and you're feeling like, oh, we would like to have more, but that just stresses me out. Well, guess what? You don't have more in this moment, so you're not having God's grace for something that doesn't exist yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like I feel like with every addition, you know, there were hard times, and there were areas where I had to die to myself and surrender. I remember when I had two, that I was like, I know I need to have more kids because I'm trying to control too much, or I'm not letting go enough. And I'm like, I know that I need that the more to kind of force me to surrender, if that makes sense.
No, it's crazy how much you learn about yourself too.
Yeah.
As you're learning your kids and those new things come into your life. So I totally get that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like what gets, you know, easier, one of the things was like the fact that your newborns are going to grow up and they're not going to be 100% dependent upon you. I mean, Valerie's only one, but I know you see it. It's like you remember those days of like, I'm just stuck, you know?
Yeah.
All she wants to do is eat. And it's like me with my youngest being 3, I'm like, oh, I want to be stuck. I want a baby, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, but in the moment, we look for the negative and we focus on that, when it's like, no, we need to savor it. And, you know, I remember probably after my third, I remember just recognizing, okay, at about 12 months, I will have the energy and the time to get laundry, dishes, and most of the things done that I want to. And until that point, I need to just not have the expectation that I can do A, B, C, D, E, F, G before noon.
Yeah. Which is very hard to surrender to.
God.
Sorry, I was just going to say, which is very hard to surrender to admit that, okay, I can't do it right now, but that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, I mean, when it was just Kate and I, keeping up with the house was a breeze. I was like, this is great. I can do this and this. And then as soon as Valerie came around, I was like, my life is falling apart. When in reality, no, my energy is just somewhere else right now. But yeah. No, well, and at your testimony and story about Alana, and it's just so powerful. And I know we don't have a ton of time to get in all the details, but I did want to just touch on that, just to say how cool I can see even God just working in your life and how much that's grown your faith, which I think is just such a cool thing. And it's not something that anyone should be worried about when it comes to adding children to your home, because anything you're given, just like you said, God gives you what you need. And so in the moment you might look at it and feel like it's impossible or not know what you're going to do, but when he's with you, he'll never give you anything that you can't do without him. And so it's amazing to see that and you living through that. So that's just wanted to say that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, the reality is it's been difficult. Like I said, it was the hardest thing, but when I look at it, it's like I also see God's power through her life, because, you know, she has a situation that some kids can't talk or walk. And the Lord has shown his power, and it has not just affected us. It's affected people that we didn't ever know. You know, her journey, there's countless just situations that the Lord has brought us through. So maybe another time we can go into that, but
yeah, no, absolutely. Well, do you think after Alana, how have the boys kind of handled the situation? Or I guess, how would I word that better? From Jack all the way to Kai, what would you say have been their biggest things that you've noticed in them where they've kind of changed as siblings have been added? Or do you know what I'm trying to ask? Sorry, that's not the best way of wording it.
No, I think I know what you're gonna is
Okay.
how siblings are affected when you add additions. So
Yeah.
Jack, honestly, all of the children, I never recall that like the sibling rivalry as far as jealousy and all that. To be honest, like they were always so excited for a new baby. Even to the point Malachi is the youngest and he doesn't understand what it would be to add another one. But he said to me the other day, he's like, I want a baby. And it's like,
Oh no, here it comes.
they, like Koa, they just all love each other. They all have companions. And that's the other thing when you have just one, which is fine. Some people, that's all the Lord allows people to have, and it's fine. And, there's that life looks different, which is fine, than those that desire to have more and the Lord blesses with more, but they are playmates. They're their own friends, like we personally have been sick for over 2 weeks and we've all had each other to hack on and play with. And so, and we also can model just the gospel and model, things that are important to the Lord that we see in scripture, just with loving one another and with, forgiveness, because we all mess up, right? So just to each other, just practicing that of, I'm sorry I did this and please forgive me. And then, just guarding our words and speaking life to each other. If we can't do it to our siblings, it's gonna, sometimes people out in with public, they're more careful, but the practice really comes in your home. So.
No, and I think that's a great way to also kind of set up your home, if you will, for like us right now, just having Valerie. The way we treat her is going to do a lot in how we treat our next children to come, and also how she'll treat her younger siblings. I think that's something you can set from day one and be that example no matter how many kids you have, to kind of, no matter how many get added or if it feels like a lot, it's still that same home base of your values and keeping God in the center of it all, which I'm sure is helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you add more, there'll be an element of experience for Valerie or for anyone else that adds to 2 that you just can't get until you have that child. But the beauty of God, allowing us to carry more children as opposed to, other situations where they adopt an older child. But the beauty is that newborn isn't going to try to steal a toy from day one. So they're going to bond with that baby. They're going to snuggle with you. And, there's going to be elements of that whenever, there are additions that kind of help. And, if there are revealing times where it's like, the oldest child is, throwing things or getting mad. Usually it is a form of, it's their sin nature coming out, that it's like, I don't like this. I want, to be the center of attention, because we all have that. Right. And it's but it's an opportunity to train them. It's an opportunity to just be like, that wasn't the right way. Let's use our words and, and it's age appropriate, of course, because some depends on the age. They can't understand like 5 sentences. So,
yeah.
But
what do you think has gotten easier over time? Not necessarily with adding kids, but just kind of motherhood in general. Over the past 10 years with everything that you've been learning and witnessing.
I would say it's gotten easier to, I would say don't really know how to verbalize what I'm trying to enjoy them, but also to enjoy the moments and to slow down. I think sometimes, especially in today's culture, there's very much like, go do this, do this, do this, do this. We need to have these play dates. We need to have our kids in gymnastics and soccer and learning an instrument and doing all these things. I think it's gotten easier in some ways to just be and know that you don't have to do all the things. And also not comparing your family unit to any other family unit, because it's not going to look the same.
No, that's a
There
big
are,
one.
I mean, we definitely need to encourage others and, speak into other people's life because we all can learn and grow from each other. Obviously, that's the point of this podcast.
Yeah.
But, to say, oh, well, they, they take their kids to Disney World like every week. I'm like, man, am I not? It's like, nope, because that's not in our budget. And we have a daughter that can go on the roller coasters. And so, that can be applied with every other situation too. So I think with the more children I added, it got easier to also let go of some of the expectations of what I thought was important. And I'm still growing in that. My husband makes a joke that I do everything but where a lot of times I'll wait to eat breakfast so late because I had to get the dishes done and do this and do all the things. I'm like, but now I can finally do it. I don't have a newborn keeping me from doing it, But then there comes a point where I'm hangry, and is that really the better to do? So,
no, I think that's awesome because even for me, like as a first-time mom, obviously all the information or learning that I had prior to having Valerie was what I could find or see other people doing. So it was really easy for me to kind of decide, oh, this is the kind of mom I want to be because look at how their lives are going, or this is what I want to do because look how this is working. Whereas once you kind of have experience and you decide what your own rhythm is, then you can just do you versus, trying to compare yourself to what everyone else is doing and trying to come up with something when you really have no experience. So, no, that's awesome. And that's definitely something that I look forward to, is to just rest in my own decisions versus worrying about what everyone else thinks about them, because it's very easy to compare yourself to moms specifically.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hard job. So,
yeah. And if you're tired or if you're nursing your baby and you're just aimlessly scrolling social media, it will be very easy to just, look at their house. It's clean. No, they're showing you one thing. I've got a curtain behind me. You got to see the piles of laundry. I mean,
yeah.
It's all relative. And I think, spending that time reading, play the Bible app, put an earbud in, and just, or pray and just talk to the Lord or stare at your baby. Like, so.
No, I miss that so much. I remember breastfeeding, and you even told me this and I didn't listen. But you're talking about how you would scroll and you're like, I wish I just like sat in the moment more. But every time Val wanted to breastfeed, I was just so exhausted. I was like, I just want to like check my phone. Do I have any texts? What's going on? And now looking back, I'm like, I just want to stare at my baby. Like she's off in the other room running away. But
yeah. And they come to a point where they look in your eyes, and it's like that connection where you are my mommy, and it's the best thing.
I remember the first time I noticed that she like came to and was aware of what was happening and who I was. And I lost it. I was just bawling my eyes out. I was like, this is amazing. But it really is such a gift. And that's why for me, like having more kids, I'm like, I don't think I can ever have enough. Like, I don't think that'll ever get old. I don't think that I'll ever be at a point where I'm like, oh, I don't have enough money or I don't have enough time. To me, I'm just like, let's load up the church band. Which, everyone has a different perspective, but that's definitely where I am at. So it's cool to see you. And I mean, even Kate's mom, Kelly, having 6 kids and seeing that it's possible. And you don't have to be terrified by all the reels or all the horror stories you hear from other people, because that's not necessarily the reality for everyone.
Yeah. And the reality is the Lord is the one that is giving us the strength. And, there are sacrifices made 100%. But they're very worth it. And, there's still going to be the days where and seasons, right, where you feel like you're surviving and not thriving. And sometimes that's just living in a fallen world. Sometimes it's God trying to get our attention that we need to surrender and let go of things. So.
Well, I think we've mainly covered all the topics. I love interviewing you because you're a talker, which is great. But my last question here was, what wisdom or uplifting news would you like to share with mamas expecting more kiddos or about to have their first? Because they're about to enter a whole new season they have no experience in. What would you say to them?
I'll revisit it, is really, you're not in control. Surrender. And just to reiterate, 2 Corinthians 12:9 is that his grace is sufficient for you. Don't go to tomorrow. And, surrendering to the Lord, that his power is going to be made perfect in your weakness. And really shifting our expectations. And just, I kind of like basically said all the things that I have, but I would say just encouragement is just stay in prayer, stay reading the Bible and growing in that, and don't planning less outside your home gives you more in your home. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
no, and I think that's great. I think that's also something that we've kind of covered in the last couple episodes, especially the one regarding priorities and how important it is to keep God at the top. And I think I can see through women that I watch and how they live their lives, how much different it is to those who rely on God, and how much more you can see him evident in their life and their kids' lives. And so I think it's awesome to hear what you've been doing, and I think you're absolutely right. And thank you so much for sharing your story today.
You're welcome. If I just say one last thing would probably be when you add multiples. One thing I do remember is that the youngest at the time, so say if it was my Jack and I had Alana, they would usually take advantage of moments when you're breastfeeding. So just to expect your baby, the new baby, will survive if you have to put the baby down. For any of you going from 1 to 2 or any more, they usually take advantage of trying to get into the things they're not supposed to, because it is the moment of training. And, there's times and seasons where you're like, okay, I don't want you in front of the TV very much, but I just need a break in this moment. And so you're going to watch a show that I know won't melt your brain too bad. One of the favorite verses since Jack was 1 was in Hebrews 12:11. For the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. And it took a while to see that, but I definitely do see glimmers of that peaceful fruit of righteousness, of just being faithful to train our kids and to discipline them. And like I said, it even says it in the verse later on. And so even in those moments, there are times where you're going to have to put a newborn down so that you can train them, because it's taking that moment and being like, okay, so that would be probably a difficulty, but it's also an opportunity. So
No, and I mean, discipline, we could do a whole episode on that one in itself, but it is good to hear that you're seeing the positives of that, because right now, Valerie getting into things, I feel so terrible when I have to tell her no or hit her hand away or those kinds of things. So I know there's good to it, but right now I just feel terrible.
And it's easier now than when she's a teenager, because if she had absolutely no discipline from her mommy now, it just bigger. Well, and I know in myself,
if she's anything like me, I needed discipline. So, and I appreciate it now as an adult. I'm like, I'm glad my parents told me what to do.
Can you imagine if like we were, and I know there are some kids that aren't, and it's like, then it's like, well, I don't have to obey the speed limit, or I don't have to obey anything. Like, you're not, it's like, nope, you have to be taught authority, right? It's just the way the world works.
No, totally. And I know I have friends too that I grew up with where I understand the parent guilt now and why their parents didn't do as much discipline, but seeing them today, I'm like, yeah, this is the world. Sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah. No. Well, thank you so much, Joy, for joining us on the podcast today. Just for listeners, next week, we're going to be covering the topic of miscarriage, which is kind of a heavy topic, but one that I think is not too often discussed, and one that I think should be shared amongst moms who are struggling, and also outreach to those moms who haven't dealt with it, but need to know how they can support the moms who have. So definitely tune in for that. And thank you so much for joining us today. All right. Bye.